So hello out there in our extended family. Today's conference we're continuing to study The Heart of Yoga by Desikachar, honoring Desikachar's life's work, and continue our studies of pranayama. We could spend a year on pranayama, so this semester is getting stretched out kind of long, or these particular chapters. And today I have one of my dearest students and friends, Dave Kiff, with me, who's been studying Ashtanga for
14 years.
14 years. So he's my demo today for our pranayama practice. So this week we have been studying the vayus. And I've been talking about the vayus, a translation being the wind. So it's not enough for us just when Dave was new and I was new to the practice, we just learned to inhale and exhale, and then we added movement. And it was very simple. It was like, the way I talk about when we first learned to use our bodies, we're kind of more like puppets and we're very much in our limbs. And then when we refine that, we always talk about moving more from the center. And the breath is that way as well, too. So at first I'm just inhaling my arms and I'm exhaling them down, and I'm inhaling forward, I'm exhaling back. And then when we start to move deeper into not just our breath practice, but our pranayama practice, then we understand the vayus, the winds, or we could almost think of it as well, I love to think of it as this way, is the currents. Like the currents of the wind or the currents in the ocean, and how there's a very specific movement. So we not only inhale the arms up, but we inhale this current, and prana moves up, and we exhale the current, and the prana moves down. In the last few weeks, we've been talking about, in particular, prana vayu and uddiyana vayu, and trying to get those currents again. If you think of that movement of not just breath, but this pushing action that happens with the energy that rides on the breath, moving particularly through what I love to refer to as the dead zone. So we've been talking about, and Dave has a job with the city, so he knows that we sit a lot during the day, and oftentimes our dead zone is here. We're collapsed through the chest, the throat is collapsed forward, and when we're standing, the same thing often. It can be just a subtle movement of the shoulders forward. So I was saying that we're trying to get more oxygen and more breath into the body, and we have to use not only our breath technique for that, but also the way we hold our physical body. So last week I was saying, please don't come to your yoga practice and do the same thing you do in your life and collapse into your dead zone. But instead use up dog and all your forward folds to really elongate and to stretch this area open. I was saying in class, if I could adjust everyone in the most simple way, and I'm going to use Dave as an example, is that I would constantly come around when you're doing forward folds, when you're doing standing poses and all the different things you do, and I would just take my first 3 fingers into this dead zone and I would just lift. And throughout the day, when you might be like sitting forward, I'm just going to make him be bad Dave right now. I'm doing your texting and your computers and everything. As I would just simply come along, or when you're standing, and go like this and stretch this area out and have you almost feel like you inflate a balloon or something, right? That you kind of go into that opening and that lengthening. So when I have a new student and I'm teaching them a breath practice, a pranayama practice, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll take my hand right in front of their chest and right behind their heart, and I'll ask them to breathe deeply in and deeply out. And it's an Ujjayi breath, deeply in. Just watch Dave's chest, exhaling it out. Watch how his spine is lengthening. Watch how my hands move. You can't see the back, but you can see my front hand moving. Exhale. Good. And you almost have a sense of, just in this, when I'm holding him here, is this feeling of this current that lifts and this current that moves back down. So today we're adding to this what we've been studying. This is all part of what we've been studying the last few weeks, is we're adding this idea of the bandhas. Everyone in this room knows what a bandha is. Ashtangis, what is a bandha? They're locks. So how many locks are there first?
3.
There are 3 locks. What are they? Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha, Jalandhara Bandha. So we don't use that's the throat lock. We don't use that one as much really at all in our asana practice, but we use Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha. So for today, we're just going to look at some aspects of Uddiyana Bandha. What does Uddiyana Bandha mean? A translation of Uddiyana Bandha.
fly it upward. So it kind of comes in and it moves up is what we're thinking of. So again, I'm going to use Dave because he's such a great example here of just below the navel and that navel region in here is that when we're doing different poses, we're going to try to think of using this part of your hand and bringing this whole region inward. So the Ashtangi locks in what? What are we locking? Prana. So we're pulling into the center, sort of like in martial arts they might refer to the dantian, and I like to talk about Bruce Lee, always that powerhouse in the center, and moving gracefully and strongly and powerfully from that center. The Ashtangi does the same thing with the bandhas. We lock it in, the prana is held in, but because of the way we are able to hold it in, then the prana is actually able to move the vayus, the currents, into the very edges of our body. So we've been talking about move the currents into the edges of the chest and open the shoulders. Move the currents into the throat. And we do that by this locking mechanism. So our prana is not all randomly out here and moving around, but it's pulled in tight and strong and powerful and effective and graceful. So Sthira Sukham, we have those two elements. So within your practice today, we're going to focus on the first one. I kind of consider Uddiyana Bandha the first lock, only because I think as new students, that's the one that's accessible to us. And I'm going to ask Dave, for starters, to do Tadasana, which is just basically the standing mountain pose, right? So in Tadasana, and again, you can think of Tadasana as, I'm going to have you face the camera too. Think of Tadasana as what we do in daily life when you're standing. It's not, people have standing computers now, which is great, right? But you can stand at your standing computer and have really bad form, and that's not going to help you that much. So if we engage, one of the things that happens when you engage Uddiyana Bandha, it pulls that energy up and automatically lifts. It would actually be hard for me to have bad form and be engaged in Uddiyana Bandha. It's like once you start pulling this in, it has this ability to pull up and extend out, and this region comes in. So this is nice for all the standing poses to think of this whole region coming inward. Then when we do our forward folds, this thing happens that should feel like what Uddiyana means, pulling it inward and upward, sort of a hollowing of the belly. So rather than thinking of it just coming in, I want you guys to think of a fist that's coming into the belly area here and rounding it up and around. So I'm going to ask Dave to go into down dog, kind of facing sideways with the camera. Our camera creative expert behind that you guys never see, we'll have to take a picture of her. So Dave is in Uddiyana Bandha here in downward facing dog. And if you can see this, you can see that if I took my fist, I can actually push it all the way in and up into this area. This is a beautiful Ashtangi down dog engaged in that first lock, Uddiyana Bandha. Then with this, even though Dave's breathing, it actually stays hollow. It's not like it pulls out and it pulls in. It remains lifted. You can see a little bit of movement, but it still remains lifted and strong through here. So then with this, we think Dave is now actually able to work the vayus, all four of the vayus that we've been studying, and moving the prana into the edges of the body, so down through the palms, all the way up through the arms, through the spine. The hips are lifted, the front of the legs are lifted, all the way through the back. Again, if I could adjust everyone in class today, the adjustment I would give all of you in class, rather than this one, which was the last couple weeks, right, which was here, the adjustment I would give everyone today is I would just hold my fist into this area anytime you did a forward fold. And if you were standing, I would hold my hand here for you to get you to engage. How often do we engage Uddiyana Bandha? Thank you, Dave. How much % of the time should you be engaged in Uddiyana Bandha? All the time. So, so the idea for us is to focus on holding and locking, thank you, Dave, in the energy through this region, and then that moving it around. So to finish conference today, I want to come back to what we were studying a few weeks ago, which was this idea that breath is consciousness. So when you start to move deeper into your practice, and you're not just inhaling your arms up and exhaling your hands down, but you're really using that pranic flow and moving through the vayus, what happens automatically, I could ask anyone in this room, is it raises your consciousness. It becomes this moving meditation where you become one with the thing that you're doing. We've been studying last semester this idea of flow with Csikszentmihalyi, right? And it's that idea in our practice that the deeper you can move into not just your breath, but your pranic practice, the more you're going to raise the level of consciousness and be more in the state of meditation. Which was a beautiful story I told you guys last week about the Buddha. You know, remember the story? He was teaching for 40 years after he was enlightened, and someone saw him on the road and said, "Are you an angel? Are you a god? Are you a magician?" And what does he say? "I'm awake." And so I was saying, use this depiction of Buddha behind me as a reminder to all of us that this practice is really meant to be the thing in our lives that raises our consciousness and helps us be awake in our lives and all that we do. And in that, being the one thing that we do that we're going to practice really hard for the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, right? But the best thing about it is you guys are going to leave the room today and be better at every other part of your life. Be more conscious, be more awake for the rest of your life today. So the quote for this week is by one of my heroines, Harriet Tubman, and she said this: "Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars and to change the world." So a couple weeks ago we were saying you guys have the ability to touch 1,000 lives, and I said that number's low. I think you guys can touch more than 1,000 lives. So with our beautiful practice today, even something like studying the bandhas and studying the energy, just know that that is something that you will take out of these rooms and into every corner of your lives. Namaste.